Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a ridiculous neighbor Karen stole my beautiful restored 1977 Chevrolet C30. She then tried to run me over with it. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. And the title story starts like this. I work as a paramedic and I learned early on that if I was gonna be able to deal with the stress of the job, I needed a hobby. I saved up to buy a vintage car that was in bad shape and spent every moment I had working to restore it to former glory. Once I finished said car, I managed to actually sell it for a profit, even though that was never the plan. From that moment, I became obsessed with restoring old cars and then selling them. Most of the money I made just went into getting even cooler cars for restoration. Years went by like this and the only issue I ever had was my neighbor. Now, this woman was a nightmare and you could tell that from a mile away. With all the perfume she wore, you could also smell her a mile away. She was a Karen if I ever saw one, and I think that name is appropriate for this story. Now, Karen complained about every single thing, but the second there was a complaint about her, she would get defensive. With me, her thing was complaining about my hobby, and I had a conversation like this one many times before things escalated to a breaking point. Karen, what is it with all of that damn noise? I told you a million times that if you're going to work on those disgusting things, to do it quietly. Me, there's no quiet way to do restoration work. Plus, I don't actually have to listen to a word you say, especially over my tools. Well, the city will care when I get them to kick you out for violating city ordinances. Me, I don't work on them at night or early mornings. I don't even do them on Sunday as a courtesy to the neighborhood. If you wanna mess with me, I can make this thing a whole lot louder. Karen, you're a disgrace to the entire neighborhood. You have zero class or dignity for yourself or anybody around you. Me, unlike you? With a different guy sneaking out every morning when your son is at his dad's place? They seem to be kind of old too. Would hate for it to get around that you might be a gold digger with no class or dignity. I put my headphones back on and turned on my tools to get to work. I get excited about a lot of restorations, but for this, I was restoring a beautiful 1977 Chevrolet C30. The truck was actually in okay condition compared to other things I have restored. The base frame and everything was in great shape, it was just everything else that was a mess. I got it on a pretty good deal too for only $3,000. Now, I don't blame Karen for not knowing jack about cars. Some people have no interest in them and just see old cars as worthless. Her complaining I could handle, since I had enough to throw it back in her face when she wanted to start things with me. Instead, she did something incredibly dumb and managed to get her 16-year-old kid involved, which made it that much worse. Once the truck was finished, I was posting pictures online to see what kind of bits I could get on it. I never expected to hear the engine starting up in the 2 minutes I went into the house. I ran out and saw that Karen was sitting in my truck with her son at the wheel. I guess he was trying to drive it, but clearly had no idea how to work a stick shift. Again, I don't blame him for not knowing, and his mother yelling at him to drive from the passenger seat would not help anything either. I went right up to them and started yelling at Karen, asking her what the F she was thinking getting into that truck. Her response was actually hilarious to me, looking back, not so much in the moment. She claimed that her son needed to learn to drive a stick shift and an old crappy truck was the perfect thing to practice in. Not a care in the world that she didn't have permission. By this point the son had gotten out of the truck and Karen moved into the driver's seat. He was apologizing to me and I could see that he was upset. He was told that they had permission and he did not even want to learn to drive the truck. I don't blame kids for things that are the fault of the parents, even if they are 16. So then I told Karen to get the hell out of my truck or I was gonna call the police. I was furious that she would plan to do something like this and not care if the truck got ruined in the process. She didn't move, so I got on the phone to call the police. She did not even wait for me to be off the phone before she managed to get the truck moving forward and turning it right at me. I had to dive out of the way, and I'll admit that I screamed like a little girl. The police were still on the phone and had no idea what was happening. I told them that she just tried to run me over with the truck, but she was not even close to being done yet. She turned the truck around again and went forward right through my living room window. I was just screaming even when the police arrived. They had to calm me down and separate me from Karen because they knew I was just about ready to kill her. The truck was ruined and my house now had a huge hole in it. They were arresting Karen since she was still in the truck and asking the son questions. He told the truth about what happened and was still apologizing for being in the truck to begin with. I was asked if I wanted to press charges against her, and you can bet that I did. I wanted money back for the truck value, the house repairs, and that was just the start of it. She was being charged with attempted murder from trying to hit me with the truck. I don't know if it was her idea or her lawyer's, but she spent the entire court case trying to play the victim. Like she was just a poor single mom trying to give her son everything, and I was this evil man who had everything in his life already. It did not matter really who came up with the idea because the result was not good. She was found guilty and sent to jail. Not to mention that she was forced to pay me the cost of the truck since it was now totaled and the home repairs as well. I guess somebody should have warned her that once restored, that truck was worth around $25,000. As for the kid, I honestly don't know what happened to him since it was not my business. My best guess is that his dad got custody and he did not need to deal with his mom anymore. In my mind, I did him a favor by making sure that he wouldn't get roped into any more of her stupid schemes. You can also be sure that any leftover money I had went into buying a new vintage car so I could start the restoration process all over again. And here, ripe stars, I gotta say, restoring old cars, or probably rather motorcycles in my case, is really an awesome hobby. If I ever have a lot of free time in the future, that is certainly one of the hobbies that I will start. Do you have a hobby like this? Let us know what your favorite hobby is in the comments. Anyway, the next one is titled Don't Be Rude to Your Servers. A while ago, I was working for a popular restaurant chain. I was a bartender there but frequently picked up serving shifts. Often, I was responsible for training our new employees, and honestly, I preferred training them so they knew how to do the job properly. As such, I pretty much was responsible for training the majority of our new hires, and because I spent their first few weeks at their side, I felt responsible for them. Anyway, one particular server that I had was this sweet boy who was great with customers and would literally bend over backwards to please someone. I don't know if I've met anyone who cared about others like this guy since. As such, I felt particularly protective over this boy. One particular shift I was bartending and he was serving a larger party that had been set near my bar. I could overhear everything that was happening while he was serving them. The lady who I assumed was the head of the party would not give this kid a break and was constantly talking over him, asking for things that we never had on the menu. Of course claiming that she had it last time. Giving him attitude for these non-existent items, basic entitled customer nonsense. I could see this server was visibly becoming flustered with the table, but unfortunately in food that's what you have to learn to deal with. The turning point for me was when she snapped at the server over a birthday song. Our establishment does not sing happy birthday to tables, however, we do offer a free sundae. The server explained this, but she was not having it. He even very politely offered to sing, but warned her it would only be him singing, as the other servers wouldn't likely join in. She was incredibly rude to him about this, and I was behind the bar fuming. As he finally goes to ring in their entree order, she rudely asks him for another mojito, saying that I hadn't made it properly. Another thing to note is that our location is next to a hockey stadium, so based off whether we have a game or not, we will prepare drinks in different glasses. I had not been thinking and had made the drink in the wrong glass, so of course I was fine remaking it in the proper glass. She might have been a B, but I did use the wrong glass for a non-game day. Apparently, she thought she deserved more alcohol since I made a mistake. She sent the drink back and ordered my server to tell me to give her more liquor. One thing you never tell a bartender, make my drink stronger. So of course I remade her drink with 0 alcohol, except for 2 drops of rum down her sip straw. She certainly enjoyed her stronger drink and even ordered 2 more. I hope you enjoyed paying almost $30 for 3 drinks with maybe a quarter ounce of liquor altogether. Do not mess with my servers or insult my drinks. And also, just in general, keep in mind, don't be a douchebag to others and things like this won't happen to you. Props to OP for handling the situation the way he did. Anyway, the next one is titled Don't Steal Parking Spaces. I work in a place with a deeded garage parking, had one sweet old lady, I will call her Granny, who owned a Mini Cooper. Another couple who rented a unit didn't have a parking spot and took to planting their economy car in her spot. When Granny complained, the renters would just say they were entitled because there were so many empty parking places that Granny could park somewhere else. By the way, what the heck do they not get about deeded parking? Anyway, this continued until the day the sweet old lady decided to be not so sweet. Pulled her car in front of the 2 renters' cars and parked bumper to bumper. She put a note on their car saying, "Parking in this space is $150 a day. Please leave a check with the concierge." So the 2 renters showed up at my desk complaining about their car being blocked off and actually expected me to tow Granny's car off. I had to re-explain that deeded parking meant that I could not tow a car from Granny's spot anymore, then I could rearrange furniture in her apartment. It is her land, she owns it, you abandoned your car on her property, just talk to Granny. So after 20 minutes or so of the renters complaining, I called Granny even though it was early in the morning. She came down to the desk in her housecoat and slippers with her dog in tow. They begged her to move her car. Granny told them it would be $150. Leave the check with the concierge. They kept complaining, and then she told them it would be an extra $50 for waking her up in the morning because they claimed an emergency. Then they asked her how long before she left the garage. Granny told them, "Dearies, I'm retired. I will leave my spot when I'm ready." And the price just went up to $150 a day, plus $50 for waking me, and that will be in cash. Leave the envelope with the concierge. I'm walking my dog and I will move my car when I have your rental fee in hand. Not only did the renters not park in her spot anymore, but word got around and I didn't have to deal with that issue for another 2 years. And yeah, ripe stars, we all know, never mess with a grandma. These entitled idiots got exactly what they deserved. Anyway, the next one is a wedding drama story. Posted with permission from user Nachtjäger68. Part 1, the wedding we wanted and had. My lady wife is the anti-Karen, the anti-bridezilla. On our first date, she fanned out a stack of restaurant coupons and said, "Where do you want to take me?" We picked Pizza Hut. Her engagement ring is a heart-shaped amethyst with 2 little diamond chips. I bought it at Kmart, she cherishes it. Her wedding dress didn't come from a bridal shop, it came from the Sears catalog. It's a very simple white lace straight T-length dress with a cream underdress. Would not be out of place at an afternoon tea. I bought my 3-piece navy pinstripe suit since I needed a suit anyway, and we wore the same clothes with different accessories to a costume party as a 1920s gangster and his mall. We had the wedding at our church. Our pastor was the real deal. He blessed the rings and when we handed them back, they were ice cold. We exchanged the old wedding vows, think King James Bible style. My lady wife nixed the obey though. A couple of my buddies found out the last minute that they could make it and showed up. So after we said our vows, they pulled out words and made an impromptu arch for us to walk under. My wife's friends were upset and started yelling, "Nobody told us to bring our swords!" Yeah, major sci-fi fantasy D&D medieval geeks on both sides of the aisle. The reception was in the community room at the volunteer fire department I belonged to. Nothing fancy, but so informal and chill and practically free. A local supermarket with an awesome hot food bar catered. Everybody had so much fun. My boss's boss, a good friend, gorgeous blonde, showed up in her little black dress and appropriately flirted with my buddies. I don't think anybody will forget the pillow mint fight that broke out. A few of my wife's older relatives seemed sort of confused at the antics at first, but ended up having a blast. My father-in-law had set a rough budget for the wedding in his head. My lady wife came in way under that, so he gave us the difference in cash at the reception. He was already paying for the honeymoon as his wedding present to us. Honeymoon was within a day's drive and was a huge deal for what we got. My lady wife remembers the complete total spent by us and father-in-law as around $2,000 in 1992, which included the honeymoon. So under $4,500 today. 32 years together, 31 years married this October. Next anniversary, I'm gonna take a page from my granddad and raise a toast to 5 years of wedded bliss. Part number 2, the attempted hijacking. So when my lady wife announced our engagement, one of her co-workers, not even a friend, apparently got wedding rabies. She was so happy and went over the top offering to help. My lady wife was doing the tiny amount of wedding planning that was needed, see above. As her MOH lived in New Jersey, we are in upstate New York and had 2 kids to look after. Co-workers insisted that it was not fair to my wife that the MOH was not doing the wedding planning. And by the way, ripe stars, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think MOH is the abbreviation for maid of honor. Anyway, she kept trying to insert herself as the wedding planner, nice of her to offer. But she wanted to arrange our wedding the way she wanted it. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot? No, we didn't want frou-frou centerpiece thingies or any of that nonsense. Co-worker, not knowing my wife well, of course had zero clue what our tastes are. My wife's maid of honor was already making custom silk flowers for us and the tables as a wedding present. I think the co-worker was delusional enough to think she could weasel her way into being MOH. My wife kept politely but firmly shutting her down. The last straw was when the co-worker called me to tell me about the surprise bridal shower she was throwing for my wife so I could get her there. Oh hell no! First, my wife was already going to have a bridal shower at our house. Father-in-law and I went down to the fire hall and watched baseball. Second, my wife hates surprise parties. Number 3, my wife would never have picked that restaurant. An overpriced steakhouse is the absolute last restaurant we would ever pick. Fourth, who the heck was coworker planning on inviting? She did not know any of my wife's friends. So my wife shut that down hard. She immediately called coworker and told her off. No meltdown, no yelling, no screaming, no bad language or insults, just pure anger as hot and bright as a welder's torch. Cue tears from coworker. Boo-hoo, I was just trying to help. Nope, denied. We joked that you need to keep my lady wife away from breakable objects when she's angry, cities, mountain ranges, that kind of fragile stuff. Drama over and the wedding happened. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. My wife and I recently found out we are having a daughter. We had not really talked about names before, but we both agreed that each of us will retain veto power. When we did start discussing names, both of us wanted to name her after our late mothers. Her mom's name was Karen and my mom's name was not a meme. I told her the baby can take my mom's name as her first name and her mother's name as a middle name or have an entirely different name. But I cannot okay Karen as a first name in any case. She got offended because she just wants to honor her mother and thinks I have a problem with that. I just don't want to set up our daughter to be bullied throughout her life. I told her I would be fine with whatever first name she picks as long as it doesn't lead to the baby being picked on later in life, but she is pretty insistent on Karen. And here, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. I mean, to be honest, I'm not exactly sure if OP's wife is familiar with the whole Karen meme. If we assume she isn't and we just look at this from an outsider's lens that is not familiar with the internet at all, then it seems very insensitive from OP. But then again, if we look at it from OP's perspective, he's not trying to insult his wife or her mom's legacy or whatever. He's just worried about the kid getting bullied later, which is probably a high chance of that happening, since number one, we all know kids can be incredibly cruel, especially in school, and right now the Karen meme is just really hot on the internet. So, suffice to say, sadly, I would probably also not name my kid Karen, even though I actually really like the name. It's a cool name. Anyway, comment number 1, not the a-hole. It was a normal name, now it is a joke. Imagine baby Karen. People are gonna make jokes all her life. Comment number 2, I personally feel like the Karen thing will die off one day and our children's generation will likely not know anything about it. However, I can see where you still would be adamant about not wanting to name her that. There's a bit of a stigma around that name today. I think you guys should take a different route in name picking and just steer clear of tribute naming. Good luck, NTA. Update to the story. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up. I thought I would delete this since the issue is pretty much resolved now, but you guys are clearly enjoying it, so I thought I would provide an update. Basically, we had a talk about this and why she had such an emotional reaction to my veto. Ever since her mom died suddenly when she was only 14, she wanted to name her first daughter after her, and she did not really ever consider that the meme might be a potential obstacle. By that point, I thought about it for a while and realized that, as many of the comments have pointed out, Karen likely won't be a meme by the time she is old enough to feel its impact. So I told her I will recant my veto, but we should still reconsider it because it still has potential complications and we might just come up with a better tribute. While exchanging ideas, we realized that both our mothers, very coincidentally, had the exact same middle name, Elizabeth. Well, mine had 2 middle names and Elizabeth was one of them, but still, it seemed completely perfect to both of us, so we are going with it. Thanks for all your input. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. This story could get a little complicated if I go in order of what happened, so instead I want to clarify a few things right off the bat. I live in an HOA, but like a lot of people, I did not really know the exact names and faces of the people running it. This is the reason that for part of the story I did not know that the HOA Karen was not actually a police officer. For the story though, I will just be referring to her as Karen. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I recently once again upgraded to a new microphone, so maybe the sound is still a little bit weird or something because I still need to figure out the microphone position and so on. Either way, I hope that clears things up and makes the story a little clearer as I go through it. I cannot say that I have many things that I am proud of that I own. Possessions are not a huge deal to me, but there is one huge exception, and that is my car. I own a 1968 Ford Mustang GT 390, and that car is my pride and joy. I have been able to keep it in fantastic condition and is probably the only really nice thing that I own. The rest of my house makes it seem like I don't have money, when in reality I just don't find joy in buying a bunch of expensive things that work just as well as their cheaper counterparts. The car is a classic for those that don't know, and it is worth about $80,000 with its amazing condition. Probably even more when you factor in that I had to have the car imported from the United States all the way to where I live in South Africa. The HOA around here is pretty strict and the fines get handed out for a lot of stuff that should not even matter. I once got a fine for leaving my trash cans out the entire day, which I only did because I was not home until that night. Oh, and by the way, Ripe Stars, I forgot to mention, I am still quite sick, so sorry if my voice sounds weird. Either way, they were not blocking anything, they were just on the grass on my property edge. Of course, they needed somebody to enforce and hand out fines to people, and that was where Karen came in. Like I said before, I thought she was a police officer that was working with the HOA and keeping the neighborhood in accordance with the laws. I had seen her around and she had a uniform and badge, so I really thought she was legitimate. Even as an officer, we all thought she was a major Karen with the way she acted and always seemed to show up at the worst times. If you thought you could go against the bylaws even for just a minute, she would somehow just know and show up to give out fines. Everybody hated it, but nobody was going to argue with an officer and risk getting in trouble with the law. An HOA fine is one thing, but nobody wants to get an actual ticket from the police or even getting arrested. One day though, she was on my property and I noticed that she was staring at my car. I did not know what to make of it until I went over, and before I could even say hello, she started talking to me. "Karen, I'm going to have to confiscate this car." Me, why? Is there something wrong with it? I was genuinely confused and did not want the one good thing I had taken away from me. "Karen, we believe that this car does not have the proper papers to be in this country. You can hand over the keys to me, or I can get a tow truck here and have it dragged to the impound." I was dumb and gave her the keys, not wanting to get into any legal trouble. I was also given an HOA fine for the car that did not make any sense. I wanted to fight this ticket and decided that since there was an HOA meeting a couple days from then, I would go and attend. This is when I found out that Karen was not a police officer, but instead the HOA president and just posed as one to give out easy fines. I was furious and called her out in front of everybody at the meeting. She told me that I could not just use slander to get out of my fines and was kicked out for disturbing the peace of the meeting. Fine, I was going to get my revenge another way. Since my neighbors also hated Karen, I let them know that I found out who she really was and that she was just faking to be a police officer in order to intimidate us and get what she wanted. This also meant that my car had no legal issues, she just wanted to take it from me. We made a plan that my neighbor was going to intentionally break HOA rules in order to get her over to his house and then fine him. I was gonna film it from my yard because if she saw me, she would know that I already knew she was not official. Anyway, the bait worked and my neighbor asked her things like if she was part of the local police department, and she said yes. We had her red-handed and the only thing left to do was now to call the police on her for what she had done. Even putting aside that she had basically stolen my car, it's a crime here like in most countries to impersonate a police officer. We showed them what she was doing and they easily confirmed that Karen was in no way, shape or form a police officer, and when I told them what she did with my car, they said that since it was over a certain value, she was going to get charged even worse. They came to arrest her and she was actually still roaming around the neighborhood in her fake uniform and trying to get into everybody else's business. When the police got a hold of her, she started yelling that she is allowed to have a uniform because she is the head of the HOA and her job is to protect the people. The thing is that if she had a uniform or badge that said HOA, she might have gotten away with that, which I kind of doubt by the way. Instead though, she clearly had the police department she didn't work for all over the uniform and badge. They told her that she had to take them where she put my car and she was very reluctant to do so. Honestly, if she said it was her car, then it might have caused a little bit of a delay, but she had no issues just confessing that the car was mine. In fact, she was screaming that I did not deserve a car that nice because the rest of my house looked like a homeless person lived in it.
I have no idea how that even makes sense, but trying to analyze that could take all day. Essentially, she thought that since I did not want to buy the more expensive things in life for no reason, it meant that I did not deserve to have my classic car. I was lucky that it was still in perfect condition, and I was not going to need to fix it or anything. I know it meant that she would not have to pay me anything for damages, but I would rather it's just not have been damaged in the first place. She was gonna get in a ton of trouble anyway for the couple of crimes she was caught committing. So, for confiscating my car, she was charged with Grand Theft Auto. However, the main charges against Karen were impersonating a police officer. At least in South Africa, we like to take those types of things very seriously to avoid more people doing it. She was not even given the option to plead guilty and get parole, and instead she was going to jail no matter what happened. I cannot recall exactly how many years she got sentenced to prison, however, I just could not believe in the end that the person I really thought was a cop ended up just being a nosy Karen who wanted the HOA to run her way by any means necessary.
And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.